Welcome to the week 5 of Tech Academy. So, what's the topic of the day? The topic of the day is software testing and quality assurance. So, let's talk about software testing. Software testing is the process of evaluating a software product to determine whether it meets its requirement and specification. Testing can be performed at any stage of software development lifecycle, but it is most effective when performed earlier and more often. And we're going to break that down in a while, and we're going to see why it needs to be done earlier on and why too often. The next term was quality assurance. So, quality assurance is the process of ensuring the software development process is followed and the final product meets the quality standards. Quality assurance includes the activities such as requirement analysis, risk management, and testing. So, when we are talking about software testing, we are talking about just one part of quality assurance, but some of the people would ask, what's the difference between a software testing and quality assurance? Let's take an example here. Software testing could be said as when you go to a doctor and you get your blood work done, you're getting the result where you're healthy, you're not healthy, what are the things that you need to improve on. But quality assurance could be your personal trainer that his goal or her goal is to make sure that you remain healthy, you remain fit, and so the end goal of software testing and quality assurance is to be healthy. But software testing is a test that you're doing whether your quality assurance is working or not. So, what or why testing is crucial? Testing helps us to identify and fix a defect early on. This could be said about your own regular blood work and regular health checkup. It ensures that the software meets its requirements and specifications. So, let's say you develop a feature or something, or that allows that was a requirement of yours or your client. You want to make sure the thing that is developed meets those requirements or not. It improves the quality and reliability of the software so that when you are uh, clicking on a button, it doesn't create a timeout issue. Or when you have too many items, it doesn't fail the transaction, and things along those lines. So the testing will allow you to have a better quality and reliability of a software product. Having a better quality and reliability of a software product allows you to gain customer trust and customer satisfaction, which will allow you in turn to grow your business much better. It also allows you to build up a confidence in the software product among the users and stakeholders. So, a good tested product will allow your product manager, your internal team, to be more confident that the system is working fine. Along with that, when it is rolled out to the users, to your guinea pigs, I would say that they have a more confidence in the product and they would market, they would be more vocal about how satisfying or how good is your product. So let's take an example here. Google does testing of their search feature billion times a day. Google also makes sure that their product is accessible, and it can be accessed by any person who can use a computer. So that's what the Google does. Amazon makes sure that their products are durable and safe because they are handling PII information, they are handling credit card information, and things like that. They also make sure it's easier for your users to purchase a product. They don't want to make it harder, they want to make it as easy as possible. The next one is Tesla. Tesla tests its car for safety and for performance, but Tesla also tests its software before they roll out the update to their vehicles, because you don't want to be sitting in a vehicle that has a bug and that causes a break every 5 seconds, and you're not able to move, or it creates a traffic, or you run into a pole, or a stoplight, or even a worst case scenario, a truck. You want to make sure your product, your software that you roll out is bug free, because there could be very bad consequences, and life threatening consequences in certain scenarios. So there are different types of testing. So what are the different types of software testing? And here we're going to discuss about few very common ones, but there are several different ones that you can find out. The first one is unit testing. Unit testing is the process of testing individual units of code, such as functions or classes. Unit tests are typically written by developers and are executed as a part of the development process. Unit testing helps to ensure that individual units of the codes are working correctly and meets their requirements. So let's say an example of this would be you requested that when someone adds two quantity of a particular pair of jeans, the second one is 25% off, and that's a code change that the developer is making. Now the developer is going to make sure that when they change the quantity from 1 to 2, it does the discount of 25% on the second jeans. So that's a small set of codes that they're written, they're going to test out. So it's called a small unit that they wrote. They're testing it out. It is mostly done on the developer level. However, this can be done at the QA or quality assurance team level as well. Integration testing is the process of testing how the different unit of codes works together. Integration tests are typically executed after the unit testing is completed. Integration testing helps to ensure that the different units of the codes are working together as expected, and that there are no unexpected interactions between them. So let's say, going back to our previous example, when you add another item, another jeans, you get 25% off. But you want to make sure that when you add another product, a t-shirt or a jacket, you don't want to give out discount on that particular piece of item, or you want to make sure the checkout process calculates the correct text and things like that when you are making a change to a unit, because when you have made a change to one part of the code, that might be communicating with other parts which might be broken, and you want to make sure that the other units that are associated to the unit that you change is working fine. So that's the reason it is called integration testing. You are checking whether the piece of code that you changed works with the other units that are functional. This test could be done on developer as well as the QA level. So the next test is the system testing. System testing is testing your software as a whole. System tests are typically executed after the integration testing is completed. System testing helps to ensure that the software system meets all the requirements and that it works correctly in all possible use cases. So if you recall from our one of our previous sessions where we talked about requirement gathering and we talked about use case writing. So what would a QA person do is go through an entire system. In terms of e-commerce side, they would work on adding a product, adding a discount, adding a coupon, and then they would create a user who's going to purchase this thing. So they're going to check the entire process. This needs to be done because there might be a code change that affects the other parts of the software again, or there was a change, or there was some library update that broke something else. So you want to make sure your entire system is tested. The use cases that you wrote earlier in your requirement gathering is going to help you out here for your test cases. The next one is acceptation testing. Acceptation testing is the process of testing the software software system to ensure it meets the requirements of the users and the stakeholders. Acceptation testing is typically executed by the user stakeholders themselves. Acceptation testing helps to ensure that the software system is ready to be released to the production. So what happens is, let's say you would have a certain set of users on which you will try to roll these new features out, and you're going to get a feedback from them. So that is the reason it is called acceptation testing. You can do all your testing internally, but until it reaches the user, you don't know exactly how it's going to work out. So you want to make sure that the changes that you did are done in incremental manner, and you get the user's feedback on the changes that you are making. And then the acceptation goes to the requirements that you collected from your users or yourself, saying, okay, is this what I requested? Is this what I want? Is this how I want it? It might be that you thought earlier to have it in a particular manner, but as you are interacting with that particular feature or software, you feel like it needs an improvement. So then you can have another iteration of that release. So let's summarize here about all the different types of testing: unit, integration, system, and acceptation. Here the table suggests when it happens, who performs it, and the purpose of the test. We discussed it out: unit testing done by developers in most cases. Integration testing could be done by developers and a QA person. System test done by a QA team. Acceptation test is done by the users and stakeholders. So software testing process, what is the process of doing the testing? First, as we do anything, you need to have a planning. The first step in the software testing process is to develop a test plan. The test plan should identify the scope of the testing, the type of testing to be performed, and the resource required, and the schedule for testing. So you need to know what kind of test you are performing. You need to know how much time you have for that testing, or how much time you're going to need for that testing, and then how many resources do you have. Like there might be a feature that requires 10 hours of testing time. There might be a feature that requires 50 hours of testing time. So you need to have certain things in place. The next one is test case creation. This is a very important one, and it's going to help out in automations as well. So you need to know what are the cases that you're testing it for. An example of that is, I add two pair of jeans. The second pair of jeans should be 25% off. So that is a use case that we are testing, or the QA person is going to test towards. So we need to have certain test cases written. So going back to your requirement gathering, when you are doing your use cases, that could help the QA team or your product managers to write up the test cases. The next one is the test data generation. So you want to have a real life example of the test data for the QA team, because if you just have the dummy data, then it might not have those anomalies that might be causing the problem in the code. A symbol sign in the name might break the system, or something along those lines. A special character could break things off. So you want to make sure that you have a real life data, but you cannot have a production data into your system because that might violate your company policy. So you want to find out a real balance, or you might want to change out the production data in a way where you don't have PII information, and then give it out into the testing team. So having a good data already generated for testing is really important. So next couple of things on software testing is test execution. You have a plan, you have test cases, you have the data. Let's go ahead and go through the testing process itself. You need to have your test cases verified. So your test cases and your software to be verified that, okay, it is working as expected, or the behaviors are there as expected or not. So if a feature that is developed doesn't meet the expectation of the user, then you can kick back that to a developer and say, hey, this doesn't meet the expectation, and here are the reasons it doesn't meet the expectation. The defect reporting and tracking, another important thing. If there is a defect reported, then you want to make sure that you track, you give it back to the development team, and development team fixes it and get it back to you. So you want to have a good reporting and tracking system in place. We use Jira for our entire ticketing system or documentation process. So having that in place is gonna benefit you a lot. Some of the best practices for software testing is start testing early. I cannot emphasize how important is this, because let's say if you had an unexpected behavior that you knew earlier, it could be fixed much faster. Let's say you were having a financial accounting system in which there was a bug and you had that bug for 6 months. Now you have all these transactions that had the issue. Now you would need to reach out to all the customers saying, hey, the transaction that you had an issue. You're going to fix it, but that's a bad impression. So you want to make sure that you start testing early, and it's going to be much cheaper solution in a longer term.